right, time to talk some NASCAR. This week's race in New Hampshire, and what makes this week's because of, and again, we either did this now or we had to reschedule for Thursday. What I'm trying to say is that I just didn't have as much time as I'd normally like to do my part. Eric's done all of his part as usual, which is the main thing because he's our lead analyst. But I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to get my picks in. So I'm going to try to do that before the end of the show. If I can't, I'm going to save my picks and we'll post it, of course, at racereviewonline.net. We'll have a description for that as usual on this page, on the show page. So check that out, including, of course, Eric's in-depth analysis of this race and every race. So check that out. If you haven't already done that, definitely click the more button on the top. You open that up. If you've never opened it up before, you miss it a lot because we have a ton of links on there with where to go on racereviewonline.net for articles and for our fantasy and for our picks. So that's a very important part of what we're trying to. We don't usually even get in on just a show each week. But anyway, the reason why this is interesting is because New Hampshire, there are 3 different tracks now that we need to keep an eye on besides New Hampshire, because there is no New Hampshire race this year. It's only one a year. So when we take a look at New Hampshire, we don't have anything to go on except last year, which was, of course, the only year with the new car setup. So we have 1 year in New Hampshire, but what we also have is we've got Gateway now, we have Phoenix and Martinsville. So we do have all 3 of those races in this year, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
and last year as well.
Yep.
So
last year, those races compared real well to this one. So it seemed like the guys. Granted, there was a few. I mean, you're going to get he has an outlier here. He had a bad race, but for the most part, those are kind of your 3 comp tracks you can use for this weekend.
Okay. Well, some interesting trends. 6 of the last 10 winners in New Hampshire started outside the top 12. So that's outside the top 6 rows. So overall, it's saying that qualifying does not matter as much at New Hampshire. Who was last year's winner? Bell. Where did he start?
He was 5th.
Okay,
last
so
year.
Again, last year a little bit different with the setup. Only one pole sitter since 2012, which is crazy.
Yep.
Ford has won 4 of the last 5. They didn't win last year. But more importantly, this is the big one. No Chevy winner in the last 7, and only 1 for the last 16 for Chevy. But that has not stopped you, and it looks like, or CJ, because you guys have put in some Chevy drivers this week. So the question then is, again, because I haven't been able to check over those other 3 tracks, I'm assuming maybe that's why. Why are you okay with putting in Chevy drivers when I'm looking at that stat in front of me?
It's why it's the comp tracks this year, because this, I even wrote about it. It's up, it's live right now on racereviewonline.net. If you want to check it out, it's trying to figure out who's good for this weekend is a varying way of strategies, because if you look at it, a lot of times you go off of either momentum, that's a philosophy. I guess it's a momentum-based sport. A lot of drivers talk about that, or maybe you don't have the momentum, but you've been good at these tracks. So if you look at it, Joe Gibbs Racing and Stuart Haas should be, bar none, the absolute favorites this weekend. Rightfully so, and we'll go over that when we go over the drivers, where Hendrick absolutely shouldn't. But Hendrick has had a lot more success recently and on light tracks where Gibbs and Stuart Haas Racing are backing their ways into this weekend. So I kind of hedged a little bit when couple of Chevy guys and sprinkled in a few of the Toyota and SHR camp, because you just don't know. This next gen has kind of proved that uncertainty with there's no rhyme or reason for some of the race winners. But at least this way, when we go over these picks, we'll kind of cover pretty much a blanket over those guys. You can make your decisions on who you want to pick. But, it's a weird weekend to where the top 2 teams do not have any real immediate success this season, and haven't fared great on the same tracks this year where Hendrick has. But if you also look at it, Hendrick Motorsports hasn't won at Loudon in 11 years either. So you just don't know what you're going to get. Okay. It's 2 contrasting philosophies here for this weekend.
All right. Taking a look, Kyle Busch, he won the race at Gateway.
Yep.
Byron winning the race at Phoenix.
Yep.
And the Martinsville race was won by Kyle Larson. So there you go. You have your 3 Chevys winning at the other 3 tracks. So maybe, look, it's one of those things, though, that, because it's tricky, because it's one of those deals where when you're going over trends, normally you can't really guess. And that's kind of what is going on if you choose a Chevy driver at New Hampshire this week. You're just guessing that even though it hasn't happened in New Hampshire, these other 3 tracks are telling me that it should be different this year. Sort of like what we saw with Toyota on the road courses this year. Hey, awful last year up until when Bell did something late, and then all of a sudden it's been basically a Toyota deal on the road courses this year. So that's the thing. You either risk it. I'm not saying I'm going to. Maybe I will, and say I'm just going to go with New Hampshire, or I'm going to, because I'm not saying you're all in on Chevy, but it's just a matter because actually, who was your if you look, because here's the thing too, and it's not Chevy, but Bell at 5-1. Okay, now I was a little bit surprised, a little bit, especially knowing CJ. And even you, because you've been taking those favorites quite a bit, or at least the second choices, which you have. You've gone with Truex and Hamlin. Matter of fact, you've gone with pretty much
all the favorites.
The top 6. Yeah, the top 6 guys except Bell. But he's 5-1. And I'm not sure he's ever been 5-1 unless he was 5-1 on the dirt race or a road course. 18-1 last year in this race. Okay, that he won. He's 5-1. That's a big deal. 18 last year, 5 this year. But not only is he defending champ, he finished second the year before on a different car, but he won in a different car 3 straight Xfinity Series races at New Hampshire. That's a lot of where you say, all right, if I'm going to give in to a 5-1, that's the kind of data I need to do it. But the big difference is it's not Kyle Larson, it's not Chase Elliott, it's not Kyle Busch, it's Christopher Bell. So what went into your thinking of saying, yeah, I just, Truex 6-1, I'll go with, but not Bell at 5-1?
Bell just seemed crazy at 5-1 for what he's at right now. And he was 6th at Phoenix and 4th at Richmond. He was good at both, so you do have that. However, 16th at Martinsville and 11th in Gateway. And you look, he's not had a top 5 finish since his win on Easter.
We talked about that on Thursday.
Races. Yeah, and it's like he hasn't had a top 5 in 12 races, and he's 5-1. It was way too steep. He just is in a rut. Now, granted, you can tell where Vegas went with the odds because they've got all 3 top drivers are JGR, and then you have an SHR guy, Harvick, at 4. And Gibbs, this is why I went with a couple of them, but faded Bell at 5. I'm like, I could get better odds behind them. Because Gibbs, they finished runner-up in 4 of the last 5 Loudon races. And also 6 times in the last 9 overall, they had the second-place finisher. The 3 times they didn't have a second-place finisher, they won. So they're really good there. And then you look at Stewart-Haas Racing, this has been their get-right race lately. For whatever reason, the last 2 years that they've entered this race, winless on the year, so 19 and 21, they won this race. So they typically fare well too. I mean, Eric Almirola won in 2021 for crying. He beat Bell. So you could tell they kind of went all in on these trends of past New Hampshire success.
Okay.
But on the season, these teams aren't doing much right now.
Yeah.
You look at Hamlin, Hamlin, he's finished 11th or worse in 5 of his last 7 starts of the season. He's 7-1. Truex, after scoring 4 straight top 5s, he was 32nd and 29th. He's 6-1. Bell hasn't had a top 5 since Easter. He's 5-1. Harvick hasn't had a top 10, or he's got one top 5 in the last 11 races.
Yeah, and his last 3 are really bad. And I knew we were going to see really good stats with Harvick when I saw 9-1, because I was like, Kevin Harvick 9-1. Well, he must be really good in New Hampshire, and he is. He's very good. He's got 9 top 5s in his last 12 with 3 wins during that span. But like you said, it hasn't started yet. Now maybe it'll start like last year, and it'll just pick it up late in the year, and he'll be off and be in contention. But that is kind of risky at 9-1.
It is. Granted, 2 of the last 4 years, as I said, they were winless coming in and they left with the trophy. But they're also they're struggling the speed wise. And it just, do you really think, do you want to throw in all your eggs in that basket of like, yep, this is their get right race? It's going to happen. It's happened in the past because Vegas has made the odds that way. They've made it hard when you have all of them at the top. Now, if they were more 11 to 15 to 1 range, it'd be a little more inviting, but they didn't make it easy this week, especially putting C-Bell at 5 to 1. It's like, well, the guy, his only race win this year is on dirt. It's not even on a paved track.
Yeah.
But he's also been good there, so I get it too. It just, his number was too difficult for me to snag at 5 to 1. If he was 9 to 1, I'd probably contemplate it, at 5 to 1,
sure.
like, no way.
Yeah, and again, 18 to 1 last year, and even Harvick was 15 to 1 last year, and he's now 9 to 1. You know,
yep.
if he's in double digits at 12 or 15, that's a different story. But at 9, it gets you thinking. Look, I'll tell you right now off the bat, and it's kind of worked for me during this stretch. That I think this is another week where I'm going to probably work against some of these top dogs. I don't know. I mean, it's because it's one of those things where you can see them all winning. They'll have really good data here, all of them. I mean, Hamlin, 7 top 10s in his last 10 with 3 runner-ups and a win. Truex has led over 80 laps at New Hampshire in 6 of his last 9. 7 top 10s last 8 with 5 top 5s. Kyle Busch, though, now he's the tricky one, because he's led over 1,100 laps in his career. He's got 3 wins. He's got 7 straight top 5s on the year. He's getting 9 to 1 as the top Chevy. But in his last 3 races, 2 of them have been ended in a crash. And the other one last year was 12th with only 6 laps led in those 3, which combined with the Chevy deal, still an unknown in New Hampshire, gives you reason to say, maybe not this week for Kyle. But still, you know, if he does it and improves it, it's not a surprise. It's like, hey, the data was kind of there.
Yeah, he dominated Gateway, and this track will run like Gateway. Got the long straightaways, tight turns, so he was good there. He wasn't good in Phoenix, though, so it's like it wasn't really good in Richmond. So which one? It's a hybrid, all of them, but 9 to 1 for dominating Gateway. That's why I went his direction. Plus, an odd trend too. 12 of the last 15 New Hampshire winners were all Cup champions. So, you know, it's usually the better of the best. And the ones that weren't, Denny Hamlin, the year he won, he was in the championship 4. Christopher Bell won last year. He was in the championship 4. So they're having good seasons the year they won. And Eric Almirola is kind of the outlier. Like, well, he doesn't fit into any of this. But he's the only one out of the last 15. It seems like even if you've not won a championship, you've had a championship-type winning season. So you can kind of break it down if you want to go with the bigger heavy hitters. Plus, a weird trend too, if you want a live bet, 10 of the last 12 races there, the driver that led the most laps failed to win. 6 of the last 10, they didn't even finish the top 5, the guy that led the most laps. So if you're live betting and somebody's dominating early, you might find better value based off some of these trends, and picks are going to go over that. Hey, he's not dominating, but he's running up front.
And he's the favorite now in the live betting. Yeah.
Yes. So you could probably get some value that way. But it seems like this place has been a precursor to because all 4 drivers who made the championship 4 from 18, 19, and 20 finished in the top 10 at Loudon. 2021 was 2 of the 4. That's because Hamlin and Truex. And Busch was collecting this too in 2021. Remember, it rained, but they forced the green flag and they wrecked at the start. That was the only reason why. Last year, 3 of the 4 championship 4 guys finished in the top 8. They finished 1st, 2nd, 6th. So,
okay,
something to look at. So it seems like the guys that are running good on the season are typically probably going to do good here, which is why I went with some of those Chevy guys because one can make a case that Kyle Busch is a championship 4 type guy. Yeah. Larson has shown better speed on these tracks. That's the only reason why I picked some of those guys up, which I'm sure we'll go over these guys' stats here in a second.
Yeah. So let me ask you: out of Truex, Hamlin, Busch, Harvick, and Larson, who's your top pick?
Truex, I feel like now that he's sniffed victory lane this year, he's got 5 top 10s, or he had 5 top 10s his first 7 New Hampshire starts. Then he had 2 of the next 13. But over the last 10, he's had 8 top 10 finishes. 6 of the last 7, he's finished in the top 7. He was on the pole, swept both stages, and led 172 laps last year. 3rd in Martinsville, 5th in Gateway, 1 at Dover, 4 top 5s prior to this little stretch he's in. So I would say right now he's probably my favorite among that group.
Do you have a clear number 2, or are the rest of them kind of bunched together?
I think they're kind of bunched. You could make a case for Harvick, but he hasn't had a lot of finishes. He's got 1 finish better than 5th all year.
Yeah.
Larson is intriguing in a sense. He's got 4 top 10s in his last 7 there. 2 runner-ups. On LAC tracks this year, he was 4th, 1st, and 4th. 4 tops, 8 finishes his last 5 weeks. It's just Hendrick also hasn't won since 2012 there. So, granted, Chase Elliott was runner-up last year. So I would say right now, if he can stay out of trouble, I like Larson as probably maybe the second best, and you can get him at 9-1 right now.
Okay. Now we've got about less than 10 minutes to go. So Blaney, Logano at 15-1, and Logano has 9 top 10s in his last 12 with 6 top 5s and a win in New Hampshire. He's got 2 wins total, but he's only led 130 laps in 24 races, so that's interesting. And Blaney, he's been okay. I mean, he's got 4 top 10s in his last 6, with 2 top 5s. He led 64 laps a couple years ago when he finished 5th, and got off to Schneid with a top 10 on Sunday night. And then you've got Chastain and Reddick at 18-1, but neither one of those drivers have a top 5 combined. So I'm kind of skipping on those guys. CJ has all 3 has Blaney, Logano, and Chastain. Chastain's his top long shot, if you want to call it that. But you have gone with no one there. So if you went with someone there out of those 4, who would you go with?
Probably Logano. The Penske guys, I'm on DraftKings right now. They don't have top 10 yet, but they have top 5. I think the Penske guys do I think they'll win? No. Logano won Gateway last year, which is why I give him a little bit of a nod. But on similar tracks this year in Gateway, now keep in mind the worst of these finishes all go to Cindric, but this is Penske as a whole. Gateway, they were 3-6-13. Martinsville, they were 2-7-33. Phoenix, they're 2-11-29. Granted, those bad finishes were Cindric. Blaney and Logano have been more up front at these like tracks. So I would put the edge of them, and Logano right now is plus 190 for a top 5 bet, and Blaney's plus 180. So you could get plus money on him right now to go top 5 rather than an actual outright win, which I think is probably the better play than going outright win, because it's just going to be tough. Fords have only won 2 races all year, and it was at Atlanta and the Coke 600. I just don't see them winning this race. Okay. And if they were, you would think a Stewart-Haas car would have the better option of winning over a Penske. And Chastain's really done nothing. 8th last year, 24th at Phoenix this year, 3rd at Richmond, 13th at Martinsville, and 22nd on Gateway. He mentioned they just missed it at Gateway. So that's why I punted on him. That grouping, I don't feel good about race wins, but I do feel good if you want to play a prop of Blaney or Logano in the top 5 or top 10. That might be a good play to sway on your side that way.
Yeah, the problem is if you try to go with the idea of not taking the top drivers, there's just not a lot of depth to go with. No. And that's why this is probably going to be one of those weeks that you just have to go with the top guys and maybe pull your strategy, which was, 5 of your 8 picks are up front, 3 long shots. That's it. That makes a lot of sense. And as we close with these long shots, I will say Almirola and Keselowski at 22-1. Almirola did win here a couple of years ago and has really raced here well recently. But you skipped on Almirola. Keselowski, I think I got to take Keselowski, though. Even though he was 50-1 last year and 22-1 this year, he has raced well here lately. 7th last year when he didn't have a good car. 3rd year before, blitzed it in 2020 with a 184 lap win. and 15 career top 10s out of 22. So I think I do have to go with Keselowski, but you decided to go with Wallace at 28-1, who finished third last year here.
Yeah, because the Toyota factor. Because I've talked about Joe Gibbs, 2311 is basically a satellite Joe Gibbs racing team. So they've got that data. He was third last year, as he said. He had a car capable of top 5 in Gateway before his brakes failed him while he was running the top 5. And he's been decent on light tracks. Granted, his last 5 finishes on the season scare me a bit because, as I said, Toyota's backing their way in.
Yeah.
But he's also 28-1. So that's why I went that direction. And Almirola, I just didn't quite trust. Is he really going to win 2 Loudon races in 3 years? That scared me a bit. But his teammates, they're a little bit longer shots and have similar equipment and could pull something that Kevin Harvick pulled a rabbit out of his hat a few times. So I went more longer with Stuart Haas than I did at 22-1.
Yeah, you also added Priest at 55-1 and Briscoe at 70-1. So what was up with those 2 long shots?
Briscoe, granted, was 15th last year. He was 7th this year at Phoenix. He won Phoenix spring race last year, 5th in Martinsville. So they got kind of a better package suited for these types of tracks. Priest, he hasn't finished better than 12th all year, but this is his home track. He's done really well there in the Xfinity Series, the few opportunities he's had. He knows how to get around there. He's won a lot of modified races there, so he knows what to do at that track. And Stuart Haas Racing has typically had good cars at that track. So for 55-1 and 70-1 for Briscoe, I like both for this weekend just for long shots because, like you said, it just seems like the middle grouping's probably not going to win. Their stats haven't been great there. They don't have a lot of trends on their side, but you got some longer shot guys that fit the trends that if you're going to go with Harvick at 9-1, you might as well go with the 2 teammates longer because you're kind of throwing them in the same basket.
The only long shots, the big long shots that intrigue me would be, Jones has put together his best 3-race stretch of the season. So, and he does have a couple of top 10s and 1 top 5 out of 7. So he hasn't been completely shut out at New Hampshire. But the other one is Austin Cindric being 150-1. Now, I'm sorry, but that's a major lack of respect when it's clear that he's racing better the last few. He was 30-1 in this race last year, and he ran 13th respectively. So, yeah, I'll be sure to put a couple on Cindric as a long shot, but it's really hard to look at any other long shots and give yourself an excuse to put some money on them.
Yeah, and I was even looking at Bowman at 45-1 thinking that's a Hendrick guy for 45-1.
Yes.
But he's got 1 top 10 finish.
Yeah. and he never led a lap.
No, and like tracks this season, he was 9th, 8th, 11th, and 26th. So he hasn't been great.
Yeah.
He had 6 top 10 finishes the first 7 races of the year, but over the last 9, he's got none. So he's probably scored right at 45-1, but I just...
What did he do again? How did he get hurt? Oh, that race.
Flip in the sprint car, yeah.
I wonder how he feels about that now.
Yeah, because I heard all that momentum. He was the points leader at one point, for crying out loud. Now he's outside looking in. Ty Gibbs is one I would say that probably you might want to look at 50-1. He's been 13th or worse in 10 of the last 11 races on the season, but he's also in a Toyota, which we said what Kyle Busch did in that same car. Just take the 54 off. That was the 18. If you're going to go all in on Toyota, I don't think it hurts to have a 50-1 guy sitting there either. So past that, yeah, it seems to be it's going to be a Gibbs and Stuart Haas or a Hendrick type of day. That's kind of pretty much all kind of. Which side do you want to go on that's where it's hard to decipher is which do you feel good at. This would be one that I wish you had more practice where we could really tell this weekend, but 20 minutes of practice isn't going to do much of saying, oh, yeah, this team unloaded with something because Gateway. Loudon's going to be a lot of longer runs, so and you got to get some luck involved. But you're not going to see that because you're going to have varying practice plans on Saturday.
Well, check us out on Discord because we will let you know if we have a difference of opinion for whatever reason after practice and qualifying. So check us out there. I will make my picks shortly while the show is uploading, and then send them over to Eric. He'll have it posted on the website. And again, as I said, you can click the link of the description And you can actually, that's the fun thing too, guys, is that if you want, you can just click the link in the description while you're watching the show. And then you can see our picks, and we go over them, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about as we are talking. So, all right, so that's going to do it. What's up next week?
Pocono.
Oh, good old Pocono.
Good old Pocono is back.
Thank goodness it's only one.
Yep, just one Pocono race, so that's good.
That's all they need, and then it's Richmond and Michigan. And we got the 2 road courses in Daytona, and then that's it, and it's off to the playoffs. So we'll be talking to CJ definitely before the playoffs begin. So looking forward to our playoff preview show. I'm sure that'll be a live show, so stay tuned for that. But we got a long way to go before that kicks off. We will be back again next week, hopefully again on Tuesday. Eric, appreciate it. And
thank you.
You have an Indy race too, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you want to do Thursday?
Yes, we're doing Thursday, so probably Thursday morning, I would assume.
Yeah, yep, I'm good.
So, yeah, and then we'll have that posted and ready for everybody to check out on Thursday. So that'll wrap it up. Eric, appreciate it. We'll talk to you. I'll talk to you in a couple of days.
Yep, see you then.